When you watch the Lord of the Rings movies, the easy thing to see is the will of Sauron, the will of the Dark Lord. But there is another will at work that might be a little bit more invisible, yet is more powerful.
There are other forces at work in this world, Frodo, besides the will of evil.
What is that? Let's dive in. Welcome to Durbania. I'm Durbin, and this is my theological analysis for The Will of the Ring versus The Will of Iluvatar. Lord of the Rings has got to be one of my favorite movie trilogies of all time. I absolutely love them. Yes, I read the books, including the Silmarillion, but for all those books, it has been a long time. So I'm mostly going to stick to the movies and the picture I see in the movies using what I read in just the first chapter of the Silmarillion, because I think it gives us a lot of information about what Gandalf was talking about there. What is that other will, other than the forces of evil working in the world? I'm excited to dive into this with you. What is your favorite of the Lord of the Rings movies? Let's talk about that in the comments.
There's something down there. Precious.
Now, as I dive into this, I was doing some research and I came across this channel, Nerd of the Rings. So if you're a huge Lord of the Rings fan and you want to get deeper, that is a fantastic channel and I highly recommend checking it out. So who is Iluvatar? Well, he is Eru, the One. And can I just say this from the beginning? I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciation of everything. So let me just from the beginning say, I'm sorry for that. Tolkien is a genius, created his own language, and I can hardly pronounce it, but I love it because it's something incredibly beautiful to read. So you have Iluvatar in the beginning. And who is Iluvatar? He's God, because he creates everything. He creates the universe that holds Arda, which is the world that has Middle-earth on it. So he is the creator. Part of his creation is this group called the Ainur. Now what helps me, and this is me putting a Christian perspective on it, is I picture them as kind of archangels, like the angelic type, but they were the beings that Iluvatar created first, and they are called the Ainur. And it's very interesting in this first opening chapter of the Silmarillion how it describes the Ainur, because here they just delight in getting to know Iluvatar, and Iluvatar created them all with different powers, gifts, and abilities. So you would have one group of the Ainur singing, and the rest would be quiet and listen, because through the gifts and talents being showcased in this one group, they're learning more about Iluvatar. And so as different groups would sing, they would learn more. There was one Ainur, his name was Melkor. Melkor is the original Dark Lord. Sauron was like his right-hand man. So when you get to the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, Melkor is gone. Sauron is now King Supreme, and he's the one who's trying to rule everything. But Melkor was the original Dark Lord. And this is how it started, because the way I interpret this, Iluvatar does not create evil. What he does is he creates these beings, he gives them free will, and he invites them to participate with him in what he's doing. And he gives them freedom to use their gifts and abilities. And freedom means if something is free to be good, then it must also be free to be bad. And so here you have Melkor, who is impatient. So there is this void. And in this void, this is where Iluvatar will create the universe, and this is where he will create Middle-earth. But he hasn't done it yet. And so Melkor is the greatest of the Ainur. He's got the most gifts, most talent, and most wisdom, and rather than that being enough, he's discontented. He's impatient with Iluvatar. Why won't you create life? Now, Iluvatar has this thing called the secret fire, with which he's going to use to create everything and give life. So what does Melkor do? He goes into the void, seeking the secret fire so he can create, because he's just fed up with the void. It's not there, it's with Iluvatar. But while he's alone, while he's cut himself off from the other Ainur, while he's cut himself off from Iluvatar, wandering around in this void, his thoughts are turning to more and more selfish things. And these selfish things grow to this point right here. But Melkor desired to subdue to his will both elves and men, envying the gifts with which Iluvatar promised to endow them. And he wished himself to have subjects and servants, and to be called Lord, and to be master over other wills. Here you have Melkor, the seeds of that beginning right here, right now. The seeds of that quote are starting to rise up and take root in him, and he's getting more and more selfish. So here's the interesting thing to me. Iluvatar gives all the Ainur this theme. The theme from the glorious beginning all the way till its end is so astounding And I love how Tolkien words it, that really the Ainur are in awe of it, and they're in reverence and bow before Iluvatar because of his infinite wisdom. That's how great this theme that he gives them is. And this is what he says: "Of the theme that I have declared to you, I will now that ye make harmony together, a great music. And since I have kindled you with the flame imperishable, ye shall show forth your powers in adorning this theme, each with his own thoughts and devices if he will. But I will sit and hearken and be glad that through you great beauty has been wakened into song." So there you have it, Iluvatar inviting his creation to take part with him in what he's doing. His intent is good, and he wants them to do this for good. Now, what's so beautiful about this scene, it's the Song of the Ainur. And here we get the promise that one day there will be a second song, and the children of Iluvatar will join in that song. That's the elves and men. So you'll have the Ainur and the elves and men joining for a more beautiful song after the end of days when everything is set right. So right there, there's already this prophetic word in the world of Tolkien that Iluvatar wins. Everything's going to be set right. Now, we get into this, and as they're singing the song and they're adorning Iluvatar's theme, you have Melkor spending all that time in the darkness, all that time in the void. So what does he do? He comes up with his own music. He comes up with his own chord to try to go against the theme of Iluvatar. And it gets confusing to the Ainur, and some start aligning with Melkor. So this to me is a very interesting look from a Christian point of view of the war in heaven where Satan was cast down. Because here we see it's a war of music and it's a war of wills. So Iluvatar stops this music and starts new music, and Melkor rebels all the more. Iluvatar stops it a third time, starts a third song. Melkor rebels again, more and more joining him, and finally Iluvatar puts an end to it, and he says, "I will show you what you have done with your music and with this rebellion." And so then he begins to create. But this is the part that's really interesting to me, and this is what I want to get into as we talk about The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. This right here. Mighty are the Ainur. The mightiest among them is Melkor. But that he may know, and all the Ainur, that I am Iluvatar, those things that ye have sung, I will show them forth, that ye may see what you have done. And thou, Melkor, shalt see that no theme may be played that hath not its uttermost source in me, neither can any alter the music in my despite. So what is that saying? That no matter how much Melkor wants to try to alter the theme of Iluvatar, Iluvatar is too big. You can't alter his theme. You can't spite him. For he that attempteth this, to spite Iluvatar, shall prove but mine instrument in the devising of things more wonderful, which he himself hath not imagined. And thou, Melkor, wilt discover all the secret thoughts of thy mind, and wilt perceive that they are but part of the whole, and tributary to its glory. So when you look at The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, and you see the will of evil, and it seems so visible, whereas this good will of Iluvatar seems so not as visible, right here in the beginning we have this promise that even when darkness and evil rises up to try to spite Iluvatar, to spite his good creation, his good theme, and his good work, in the end they will find that it's all going to be turned on their own heads. In the end, they will be instruments in Iluvatar's hand, and his good will be brought about. These are all incredibly deep themes that are so big and difficult to get into. But again, as I see it in my interpretation, they chose evil of their own free will, and they brought darkness into the world. But Iluvatar, who has seen the end from the beginning, already knows how to work all of that in for good. Evil will not win. Darkness will not prevail. Evil can never succeed in being as evil as good is good.
One ring to rule them all. One ring to find them. One ring to bring them all. And in the darkness, find them.
Now let's dive into this picture that is given us in these films. Iluvatar's sovereignty and the freedom of his creation. So first, as we dive in, we have the will of the ring. And I like what Gandalf says about it right here.
The ring yearns above all else to return to the hand of its master. They are one.
Now that is plain and simple. The ring has a will of its own, a desire.
And the ring of power has a will of its own.
And it's always desiring to return home to its master. Its master is always desiring its return. So they are always looking for each other, looking to carve a path to get to each other. And so at the very beginning, you have this moment.
And into this ring, he poured his cruelty, his malice, and his will to dominate all life.
And so the prologue shows us how his oppression, how his evil, how his darkness was spilling out into Middle-earth. So he chose to act in evil instead of good, and it brought about evil consequences upon the earth. And there were those that accepted, like what does it say about the 9 men? Above all, men desire power. So they were just excited to get it. And I'm sure maybe they were corrupted pretty quick. But the point is they welcomed in that corruption. So they chose to accept these things from Sauron the Deceiver, and his power spread throughout Middle-earth. So in the prologue, Isildur takes up his sword and he smites Sauron's hand, and his fingers fall off, and the ring falls. Now, right then and there, you see the will of the ring. The master is dead, but the master's life force is tied to that ring. So he's not dead, because his life force is tied to the ring, and the ring still exists. Give him time, he shall return. And it took quite some time, but this also gives us this picture of how patient evil is. It's patient. It's fine to wait for the right time to strike, to dominate, to take its vengeance. But right from the get-go, we see it working. Isildur cuts off his fingers, he takes the ring, and right there you see it. You see the spell of the ring working on him. Remember, men above all else desire power. Up to that point, I think Isildur is fighting for the freedom of his people. And in his own mind, even holding the ring, he would say, I'm fighting for the freedom of my people. And maybe that's why he kept it. You remember Boromir? How bad he wanted the ring? Why did he want it? To use it to protect his people. Use the enemy's weapon against him. But that's not possible. Maybe that was going through Isildur's head, but that's just speculation. Well, then you have Elrond, who takes Isildur to Mount Doom. This could have all been over right here at the beginning. All Isildur had to do was cast the ring into the fire, but he's got free will. He had his freedom to choose whether to keep the ring or destroy the ring. But the ring, it's powerful. It has a will of its own. I mean, just look at this. You could see he's like under a bit of a trance. He probably doesn't even know it. But the ring is calling out to him. It's calling out to the weakness in him for no other reason than to preserve its own life so that Sauron can return, so that master and ring can be together again. My wife is watching this. She goes, what is wrong with Elrond? Why would he just take the ring and throw it in? Like, get it out of his hand and throw it in there. And if that guy's gonna fight, then throw them both in the fire. Maybe that was how the ring was working. Maybe Elrond didn't throw him in there because the ring was working on him. Or maybe Elrond didn't want there to be a war between men and elves right after this. I don't know, but neither one of them chose to have the ring thrown into the fire. Now, the ring, with its will, not too long after this, abandons Isildur to his death. And it hides right down there underwater for 2,500 years. Now, listen to this part of the prologue.
And for 2,500 years, the ring passed out of all knowledge.
Don't you think maybe that's some of the cleverness of evil, the cleverness of the ring? Those who don't remember history are doomed to repeat it. Do you think maybe that's what the ring is waiting for? I mean, I'm sure it probably just took that long for Sauron to begin to gather strength and to reform all that. I'm sure like that comes into play. But I also can't help but wonder, what if it was intentional that he let that time pass? It doesn't feel the same to him as it does to us. So if he just lets that time pass, then maybe people will forget and they will be doomed to repeat their history. What's sad here is Smeagol is the one who finds the ring. And what's sad about it is how quickly and how easily he's corrupted. I mean, that didn't take long, and he's killing his friend. It's his birthday, and he wants the precious. It did not take that long at all, and it poisons his mind for 500 years. So here's the ring offering Gollum this wonderful gift of long life, which I guess would be a kind of power. But now I'm going to quote Tolkien's friend C.S. Lewis from The Magician's Nephew, the 6th book in the Chronicles of Narnia, because one of the things that is said in that book is length of days with an evil heart is only length of misery. And even Gandalf says this about Gollum.
He will never be rid of his need for it. He hates and loves the ring, as he hates and loves himself.
So you could just guess he's having length of days with length of misery, yet this ring keeps on playing on him. So even though this might be misery to him, there's an addiction. There's a bond, a wicked bond that can't be broken here. And so he's bound to that ring, and he's bound to its fate until It abandons him. It's fascinating to me, and I'm going to get more into this in a little bit. Why did it abandon Gollum here and now? It cared nothing for Gollum, only that Gollum was just another person that held on to it and that kept it safe from people trying to throw it into the fire. Now, this is the stuff that I find fascinating, because I was rewatching The Hobbit, and I don't know how you feel about The Hobbit. I think it's weak. It's not bad. It really isn't. And there's a lot of good stuff in it and a lot of fun stuff in it, but compared to Lord of the Rings, I mean, I think they tried to make it something it isn't. But that's a review for another. Actually, I already have those reviews. You can check them out. I did them with Sean Chandler. The point is it's interesting to watch how the ring plays on Bilbo. And I think Martin Freeman does a great job in his performance with all of this, because the ring did not intend to come to Bilbo, but now that Bilbo has it, the ring's gonna frickin' survive. So it starts to do what it's always done, which is to try to corrupt its host and play on the will of its host and bend that host will to its will. It did that with Isildur. I mean, it's just, that's what it did. It did that to poor Gollum, Smeagol, and now here it is working on Bilbo. And what I found interesting, this last time I was watching The Hobbit, you get into the desolation of Smaug. They're about to enter Mirkwood. And so I like this moment where Bilbo's about to tell Gandalf what he found in the Goblin Cave.
What did you find? My courage.
Now, do you see what he's struggling with there? He wants to tell him the truth about the ring, but something holds him back. It's the will of the ring playing on the will of Bilbo, keeping him from telling Gandalf. My wife and I watching it again, Laura's just like, oh my gosh, if he had just come clean there and showed Gandalf the ring, they could have had, from that moment, up to the freaking Mount Doom and thrown it in the fire, and that whole thing would have been done. Of course, Smaug might have ended way differently, but the point is there would have been no Sauron or Lord of the Rings. You know, they could have gone right then and there. But something held Bilbo back. It's the ring. It's defending itself. It's protecting itself. And one of my favorite moments in Desolation of Smaug. Smaug.
Oh, Smaug. The stupendous.
He's in Mirkwood. He's fighting the spiders. And what's interesting is he drops the ring, and that weird, I don't even know what to describe, that thing. That weird thing comes up. Now, if you look, its legs aren't even touching the ring. It has no desire to go for the ring. But in my interpretation, I can almost feel the ring calling out for help to Bilbo. Bilbo viciously kills this thing. I mean, the thing was going to kill him, so he needed to kill it anyway. But it's the manner in which he does it. I mean, there is this kind of cruelty, not that he's killing it to defend itself, he's killing it to defend the ring. And so you see this Gollum-esque cruelty rise up in Bilbo as he kills this thing, and then he takes it, he goes right up to its face with the ring, and he says,
Mine.
that's telling. That's a very Gollum moment. But what's also interesting, and I don't know if you've ever, I'm sure you've seen this, it's just powerful because Bilbo then, it's like the spell drops and he's holding the ring and he looks down at his other hand, it's shaking a little, and he just realizes how he killed, the manner in which he killed that thing, the feelings that were flowing through him. And it's like this, he's wounded by it. He's wounded by the method he used to take out this creature. It's like the ring had a spell over him and now it's lifted and now he's left feeling shame for what he's done. That really feels like evil. And in a sense, you could see evil working on his heart and breaking him down even in these moments. Now from here, Frodo gets the ring. You know, Bilbo drops it, he leaves it in his house, and now Frodo takes up the burden. Frodo is the one who takes it to Rivendell. And there's just so many examples and instances throughout Fellowship, throughout Two Towers, and throughout Return of the King. It's innumerable. Just watch for them. Those moments where the spell kind of takes over Frodo.
You can't take your eyes off it. I've seen you. You're not eating. You barely sleep.
So the ring might know Frodo's taking it to Mount Doom to destroy it, yet all the while, that's still also closer to its master. So it's working on Frodo the entire time. It's calling out to the creature Gollum.
Now the ring has drawn him near.
Gollum has such a very interesting part to play in this trilogy. Like, the ring is calling out to Gollum, and this is why he's following them. We have this moment where Smeagol tells Gollum to leave him, and he's free for just a little bit.
Gollum, Gollum, Gollum!
But then, when Frodo makes a big mistake in how he deals with protecting Gollum with Faramir and Faramir's men, Gollum feels betrayed, or Smeagol feels betrayed, and that familiar spirit of Gollum, I think that personality created by the ring, slowly creeps up on him. And he returns to it because it's familiar, it's comfortable. Master Frodo hurts us. And now he goes back to Gollum, something familiar and comfortable. Because it was difficult when he was stepping away from the ring, breaking its bondage and breaking its hold on him. But he returned to it fast. So you could see the ring calling out to that weakness altogether. And then you have that final battle in Mount Doom, right there with those fires. And Gollum is so desperate for it that he bites off Frodo's finger to get the darn thing and dies with it. You know what's even more sad? As he's sinking into the fire, look how he's holding his hand above the lava. He cared more about the ring and its life than his own life. He loves and hates it as he loves and hates himself. But that is how evil held him. It held that stronghold over him and called out to him throughout that entire journey. One of my favorite instances of this is Boromir. I mean, from the moment Boromir sees it, it is playing with the weakness in humanity.
The doom of man.
It is a gift.
That's why Aragorn is afraid. He's afraid the same weakness in his ancestor is in him. And it seems to reinforce that fear when he sees how quickly it plays on Boromir. I mean, right there in the Council of Elrond, there's the ring. And what does Boromir start doing? I mentioned this earlier, didn't I? Where Boromir is saying, let us use it against him. It starts to play on him there. And as it plays on him throughout the rest of the Fellowship of the Ring, I love what it builds to. And as they're in the woods, Frodo's gone off alone because he's thinking, I've got to go take care of this by myself.
He will try to take the ring. One by one, it will destroy them all.
So, he's dealing with that. He's dealing with, I got to go alone so nobody in my group becomes corrupt. And he already knows Boromir is falling.
I know what you would say. And it would seem like wisdom, but for the warning in my heart.
So here is Frodo alone with Boromir, and the ring it pounces on Boromir. And Boromir is so after Frodo for the ring because he just wants to take it to his people. Look at how the ring is playing on him. It's playing on the noble side, right? The noble side saying, no, if I could just bring it to my people, we use it against the enemy. I want to protect my people. It's trying to play on his nobility to get him to do something crooked and get him to do something evil. And look at how it's twisting him. Look how it's twisting how desperate he is to get it. And then when that doesn't work, it plays on his fears. You will take the ring to Sauron. Look at him freak out. And it's when Frodo gets away. Frodo has to put on the ring. And when he gets away, you have Boromir who slips, falls, hits the ground, and it sobers him up. The ring's hold leaves him, and look at his reaction.
What have I done?
That's a brilliant performance. And it's really sad how he dies because it makes it even more powerful. It's like you get that he's so ashamed of him trying to take the ring. Now he must maintain his honor. And you just see how selfless he is and how selfless he can be. So it's a great picture of the corruption of the ring and it's seeking who it can devour.
It is a strange fate that we should suffer so much fear and doubt over so small a thing.
It is sad to me that Frodo gets all the way to Mount Doom. And there he is, standing over the fires. And the ring takes him. It's like that last possible minute. But, do you hear the sound even as he's sitting there staring at the ring? It's like a music. It's like a heartbeat. It's just this powerful, hypnotic sound as the ring in its death cries is calling out to Frodo with every ounce of power that it's got. It's so close to its lord. It's so close to help. And Frodo has been worn down so much, that finally here, in these last minutes, it takes him.
The ring is mine.
So I think this just shows us the full darkness of the ring and that it's full will to corrupt. But it also shows us this kind of despairing thing, doesn't it? The Bible says we walk by faith and not by sight. And evil, it walks by sight. Like when we see evil at work in the world, it is plain as day. And sometimes when it comes to seeing God work, it seems like it's more behind the curtains. So it could be more difficult. Yet here, I want to point out now, where is the Will of Iluvatar? And even though it is more behind the scenes and behind the curtains, I want to show you it is infinitely more powerful than the Will of the Ring. It is infinitely more powerful than the darkness and the will of evil. So much more powerful, evil has never stood a chance.
And I come back to you now, at the turn of the tide.
Now let me roll this back to something I was speculating about earlier. Why did the ring abandon Gollum?
Rumor grew of a shadow in the east, whispers of a nameless fear. Its time had now come.
It must have sensed there was a path right there. It must have sensed it, so it abandoned Gollum so that it could be found by its next victim to be taken to Sauron. But I love how Galadriel, in this whole opening sequence, she took care to say to us this.
But something happened then the ring did not intend.
The ring did not intend to come to the hands of a hobbit, to the hands of Bilbo Baggins. Now this is fascinating, because yeah, I did talk about how at Mirkwood, maybe Bilbo could have told Gandalf he had this ring and it could have been taken care of then. Maybe. And it's interesting to look at how the ring took hold of him when he was fighting those spiders. Yes, but let's give Bilbo some credit, because Smeagol was corrupted like that. Bilbo had the ring for like, what, 60 freaking years? Are you serious? And you know what it builds up to? One of the most powerful scenes in the Lord of the Rings trilogy is before anything happens. It's right here in Fellowship of the Ring, after his 11st birthday, however he says that. And he's trying to leave the house, and he wants to go to Rivendell, go on adventures again, and he keeps thinking he's putting the ring in the envelope to leave it, but he keeps putting it back in his pocket. And Gandalf is saying, why is this so hard for you? So we see the ring has a definite hold on Bilbo. It definitely has some corruption, and it definitely has some hooks in there. But we need to give Bilbo some credit, because right when it came to it, when he was walking out that door and he realized he had it again, there it is in the palm of his hand, staring at it with utmost desire. The music begins to build in intensity. Sweat begins to bead on his forehead. And with great effort, he turns his hand and the ring drops to the ground and he leaves. So where the ring may have intended to go to Sauron, Iluvatar interrupted its will. And in Iluvatar's will, he brought it to Bilbo, a little hobbit, this creature of more substance and strength than we could imagine, where it was kept safe out of the Dark Lord's reach all of this time. And then in the right time, it came to Frodo.
There are other forces at work in this world, Frodo, besides the will of evil. Bilbo was meant to find the ring, in which case you also were meant to have it.
Because this is Gandalf talking about the good will of Iluvatar that is at work in the world, bringing about victory over darkness. And they're the characters that are in the midst of it. They don't see the end the way we either have read the books or seen the movies see the end. So we get to see how this is weaved together to an amazing tapestry of victory. But they don't see that yet. And so here's Frodo wondering what to do next. But let me show you something else that's in this scene.
It's a pity Bilbo didn't kill him when he had the chance.
Pity? It was pity that stayed Bilbo's hand.
That's another reason that I believe Iluvatar chose Bilbo, knowing the end from the beginning. Knowing Bilbo and knowing what Bilbo's made out of. In that moment, Bilbo could have killed Gollum, but he didn't. And I think that pity was Iluvatar's pity. Because I think Iluvatar wants to save Gollum. He wants him to be Smeagol again. And so, this was an opportunity to draw Smeagol back into the conflict, back into what's going on. Not to condemn him, but to save him, to bring him to that point of choice, to choose good over evil, to break the ring's hold over and have a part to play for good.
My heart tells me that Gollum has some part to play yet, for good or ill.
I love how Gandalf says that. And the fact that he says that, like, I imagine Gandalf is close to Iluvatar. So if in his own heart he thinks that you know, Gollum has a part to play for good or evil, I think that's accurate. And Gollum could have chosen good. And in fact, like I said earlier, he did. But it was for such a short time. Gosh. He tells Gollum to leave. He becomes Smeagol again. And he's so happy until those soldiers beat him. And like I said, he just went right back into what is comfortable. And that just makes me so sad. It breaks my heart because he tasted freedom. He was there in the light and he chose the darkness. He loves it. He hates it. The darkness is cruel to him and abusive to him, but it's an abuse and cruelty that he knows. So he crawls right back into it because it was hard to break those bonds. It was hard to break free and realize the truth. So he went right back into what was the easiest. Who knows what role Gollum or Smeagol could have played at the end? Who knows? But he tied himself to the fate of the ring, so he died when it died. And to me, that is incredibly tragic. And you have more examples of this throughout, because Gandalf could have easily taken the ring from Frodo right in the beginning of Fellowship. When Frodo offered him the ring, Gandalf could have taken it, but he didn't. Because Gandalf, he knows what he is. He's a wizard, okay? He is powerful. And I love how he words it.
I would use this ring from a desire to do good, but through me, it would wield a power too great and terrible to imagine.
So freaking true and so wise. He knew himself and he was going to choose to play his part for good, and he chose good over evil. Then it comes to Galadriel, and it's that same thing where she turns all freaky.
In place of a Dark Lord, you would have a queen! Not dark, but beautiful and terrible as the dawn!
Again, Frodo offering it to her freely, and she passes the test and refuses the ring. See, these powerful beings know the corruption of the ring. They could have chosen power, you know, not worried about the corruption part. I want freaking power. That's what they could have chose. But they went with Iluvatar.
I passed the test.
They played their role for good and backed away from the ring. And right there, I see the strength of Iluvatar in them. You know, one of the most devastating scenes in Fellowship of the Ring is where Gandalf is lost, where he falls into shadow.
I am the servant of the secret fire. Fly, you fools!
That was a tragic time. They thought it was over. Can you imagine how Frodo felt standing up there on that mountain and he was the one who said, we will go through the mines? Can you imagine how Gimli felt constantly saying, no, we need to go through the mines? How about poor Pippin, who went to touch that arrow and the armor falls down the well, making all of that noise, awakening all of that evil to their presence, thus bringing the Balrog of Morgoth forth, and then Gandalf battling it and falling into shadow. Can you imagine how they would all be blaming themselves for the loss of Gandalf? Because Gandalf didn't see how this was going to end, but Iluvatar did. And what was used to destroy Gandalf and get him out of the Fellowship and pull him out of play so that he's no longer a player on the board during this whole drama, Iluvatar turned it around and used it as a point of victory. What should have been Gandalf's death became his transformation from the Grey Wizard to the White Wizard, Saruman as he should have been. So his part to play in this game, in this match on the board, didn't go away. He came back as a more powerful player. What evil meant to use to bring down Gandalf, Iluvatar used to transform him into Gandalf the White. But this to me is the most powerful picture. When you look at Return of the King and you see that massive field of orcs, when you see that massive field of orcs surrounding Aragorn and his army, the whole freaking army, when you go through all of the movies, look at the power Sauron has on his side. We're like nothing next to that. Who could possibly contend with that? What does Iluvatar do? He sends the ring to a hobbit. A hobbit. One of the smallest of all creatures with the hairiest of feet. But it is this little thing.
Even the smallest person can change the course of the future.
It's just a great picture of that. This little thing up against this great army, and they won great victory. So you can see how the ring was meant to come to Bilbo, because he had the will to drop it. You can see how the ring was meant to come to Frodo, because he had the will to get it all the way to Mount Doom. But Sam was meant to be there. And that is the will of Iluvatar at work in this world. Because Sam was Frodo's heart.
But in the end, it's only a passing thing. This shadow, even darkness must pass.
Whenever Frodo was ready to give up, it was Sam that was there to give him strength. When you get to the end, and that ring is almost to the fires of Mount Doom, I love that scene as Frodo's trying to climb up the mountain, but he just stops and he lays there. He's done. He can't do it. There's no more strength to contend against this great will that he has on his neck. And then here comes Sam!
I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you! Come on!
I will carry you! It chokes me up every time. But that's what this is about, right? That's what Tolkien was showing when he was writing this. That's what Peter Jackson showcased in the movie. Friendship, loyalty, true friendship. It was Sam's true friendship to Frodo that kept him loyal. So it's Sam, I think, enacting the will of Iluvatar, maybe not even knowing it, rushing out there and choosing to stay at Frodo's side. The ring took over Frodo at the end.
Just let it go!
But it was Sam that carried Frodo there. It was Sam that held Gollum back. It was Sam that when Frodo just was gonna fall and die, that he said, don't you let go.
Don't let go. Rings!
And he saved Frodo's life. And it's amazing to see him come out of the fires of Mount Doom, to get up there on that rock and say,
It's gone. Done.
You could just see the power, the bondage broken as it was destroyed in those fires. But it was Sam and true friendship and true loyalty.
What did you hear? Speak!
Nothing important. That is, I heard a good deal about a ring and a Dark Lord and something about the end of the world.
And we know that God causes all things to work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. Now, when you take The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings and you bring them together, I think they're a great picture of that verse, because you see that over and over again. You know, all good, all powerful God, which I believe he's all good and he's all powerful. But we do have a world where there is sin, where there is evil. The best way I know how to describe that is to go again to Tolkien's friend C.S. Lewis, this quote right here. If a thing is free to be good, it is also free to be bad, and free will is what has made evil possible. Why then did God give them free will? Because free will, though it makes evil possible, is also the only thing that makes possible any love or goodness or joy worth having. But we chose bad, and yet we see God moving and turning things around. For instance, look at the cross. What a horrible, wicked thing coming straight from the darkest corners of man's heart. And then Jesus took that cross. He died on it, saving us. That instrument of torture became the instrument of salvation for mankind. What the enemy meant to destroy God's plan in the world and to showcase evil through man, God took that very thing and redeemed mankind. So I guess what I want to get at is, God is so big, he's not caught off guard. We might get discouraged because unlike Lord of the Rings, we're in life. We haven't seen the end from the beginning like God sees. And when we're in the midst of it and we're seeing darkness and we're seeing evil, it's hard to see what's going on behind the curtain. What is God doing here? It could be very difficult, but God has victory, period. So we need to join his victory when we believe in Jesus and we tie ourselves to him in faith. We are tying ourselves to his victory. Jesus said, in the world you will have trouble, but take heart, because I have overcome the world.
I found it is the small things, everyday deeds of ordinary folk, that keeps the darkness at bay. Simple acts of kindness and love.
So let's not grow weary in doing good, but let's stand firm in our faith and know no matter what discouragements, no matter what hardships, no matter what darkness we may be facing, God is so much bigger. He is infinitely bigger. So what did you think of this video? Do you like this type of video that I do? Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and share this with a friend. And also hit that bell by the subscribe button so you're notified for my next theological analysis or movie review, ranking video, or anything else I do here. I'm Durbin. Thanks for checking out Durbania.